Let's talk about wide receivers that you need to be starting in week 3 of fantasy football. We're going to break it up into 3 buckets. We're going to have our smash starts, our solid starts, and then our high risk, high reward starts. 9 total players, 3 for each category, excluding the obvious names, right? Like the CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors. Those are all obvious starts. They need to be locked into your lineup. We will not be talking about any of the guys on the screen. Let's start with the high risk, high reward bucket. First guy up is Wan'Dale Robinson. If you were aggressive getting him off waivers, if you spent a lot of fab to get him on your team, you are starting him on Sunday night where the Giants face off against the Chiefs. He's coming off a career game in week 2, 8 receptions, 142 yards, got into the end zone, 28.2 fantasy points. I'm not a huge Wan'Dale Robinson guy, but the way that the Giants are using him this year is different from years past. So maybe he has a breakout campaign. Russell Wilson has been looking for him early and often, 8+ targets in each of his first 2 games. And Wilson even said that he reminds him a little bit of Tyler Lockett. That is a massive compliment considering Wilson and Lockett were pretty dominant back in their Seattle Seahawks days. And as I mentioned earlier, they're using him in a different way, meaning that previous years, Robinson was like this dump down, check down, really low ADOT type of player. This year, they're using him downfield, and he actually leads the NFL in yards on deep passes. And I think he's going to continue to eat out of the slot against the Chiefs on Sunday night, who have allowed the second most yards to slot receivers. And Vegas has this game at a 45.5 point total, which is one of the higher games on the slate. It would not shock me if we have a shootout on Sunday night. I think it's going to be really interesting, and I do think that it could be high scoring. So Robinson probably is in for another big game. Obviously, Malik Neighbors will be heavily involved, but if you're looking for a sleeper, if you will, someone to throw in your flex to really set you over the top that could score a lot of fantasy points, Robinson is your man. Moving on to our next guy, Matthew Golden, the rookie receiver for the Green Bay Packers, who's pretty much done next to nothing through these first 2 weeks. But I don't think that that is a good enough of a reason to pivot off Golden. I think he could have a big week 3 performance. He almost had a big week 2 performance. He should have had 2 touchdowns, but Jordan Love missed him on both of them. So we would probably be talking about Golden in a completely different light had he scored even 1 touchdown, right? But this is a former first-round pick. That Packers never spend first-round picks on receivers, and the Packers are arguably down their 2 top receivers in Christian Watson and Jaden Reed. They need someone from this wide receiver room to step up. Golden could be that guy. He has blazing speed. He's a really strong route runner who actually led the NFL in separation in week 2. And while you could argue that Green Bay might not have to do a lot on offense to beat the Cleveland Browns, they might be doing a lot of passing, though, to get up big early because Cleveland has one of the best run defenses in football. They held Derrick Henry to 23 yards on the ground last week. I'm expecting Green Bay to pass a lot in this one, and I think the rookie scores his first NFL touchdown in week 3 against a very beatable Browns secondary that allowed 8.8 yards per target to receivers through the first 2 games. So I really like Golden. Obviously, he offers some risk, but I think the reward is tantalizing in week 3. Next guy up is Jalen Waddle, who had a really strong performance in week 2. 5 receptions, 68 yards, got into the end zone, 17.8 fantasy points, and he's still the consensus wide receiver 37 to 40 in most rankings right now because Jalen is one of those guys who he'll have a big game and then he'll have 2 fantasy points. He's very inconsistent. He's hard to trust on a week-to-week basis, which is why he's in the high-risk, high-reward bucket because when he hits, he could win you your week, and when he flops, you're pretty upset. But I think that he's in for another strong performance in week 3, and he's leading all Dolphin receivers right now in first read target share this season and seems to be the preferred option over the disgruntled, the everyday seems upset Tyreek Hill. I'd be starting Waddle tonight if he was on my roster because what's going to happen in this game? What is the game script going to be? It's pretty obvious. Buffalo is going to be up big early with Josh Allen, James Cook, and company. They're going to score a lot of points on this really bad Dolphins defense, and then Miami's going to be in catch-up mode. They're going to be throwing a ton, so you can expect a lot of points to be scored in this one. I think Waddle has a big day. Totally fine if he's in your flex. and I think you'll be really happy that you started him. All right, let's move on to some smash starts. First guy up, A.J. Brown. It's been really bad. If you're a Brown owner out there, I'm really sorry. I can't imagine how frustrating this has been. I can't imagine how A.J. Brown feels. Like, he's got to be so upset. His stat line through the first 2 games is insane. He has 6 receptions for 35 yards, 0 touchdowns on 9 targets, 9.5 combined fantasy points. It's been bad, and there's good reason for it. And none of it has to do with Brown. None of it is really Brown's fault. It's this offense. It's Jalen Hurts, who threw for 101 yards last week and still does not have a passing touchdown on the year. This offensive system, the scheme, the play calling, it's been not Brown's problem at all. They need to figure it out. Since losing Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator, this offense looks stale, slow, not creative at all, very vanilla. They need a game where they're down multiple touchdowns and they have to start throwing the football, and I think that could be the case this week against the Los Angeles Rams, who are humming right now on offense. I think this could lead to a game where Hurts throws the ball more than 100 yards. A.J. Brown sees more than a couple targets, right? Like, this isn't the game to let your emotions get the best of you and bench A.J. Brown, because I think he has a big performance in this one. It's been rocky. Stick with him. Keep him in your starting lineup, and let's just hope it is a shootout in week 3. All right, moving on to our next guy, Tetairoa McMillan. The talented rookie went over 100 yards receiving in week 2, finishing with 16 fantasy points. He ranks 8th in the NFL in receiving yards, which is super impressive to see for a rookie. And T-Mac is looking every bit worth the 8th overall pick in this year's draft, as he leads this Carolina receiving room in targets, receiving yards. He's averaging 9.5 targets per game, and he should continue to be the focal point of this Carolina passing attack. I think Bryce Young is looking better by the week, and the matchup is nice against the Atlanta Falcons, which could be a high-scoring game. We know the Falcons are going to be without their number 1 corner in A.J. Terrell, so that's huge news for McMillan as well. And I think it's a pretty easy bet to make that T-Mac scores his first NFL touchdown this week. I know it's been the Hunter Renfrow show in the red zone, as he had 2 touchdowns last week, but the 6'5", big-bodied receiver in McMillan is bound to find the end zone sooner rather than later. Obviously, you're starting him, but I just want to let you know that he needs to be locked into your lineup, and I think he has a really big day. All right, next man up, Keenan Allen. Age is only a number, right? Allen does not look like he's 33 years old. He's gotten off to a scorching hot start. 17-plus fantasy points in each of his first 2 games, along with seeing 7-plus targets, and he has 2 touchdowns. Obviously, it helps that he rejoined a former team. He already has that built-in rapport and chemistry with Justin Herbert, but I'm going to be honest, I did not see this coming. And Keenan has also benefited from LA turning extremely pass-happy this year. Ladd McConkey has seemingly been the odd man out, as Quentin Johnson has been balling to start the year. I think obviously Ladd eventually gets his, but right now it's been the Keenan Allen Johnson show. I am recording this video on Wednesday night, and we just got word that Ladd McConkey did not practice on Wednesday, dealing with a bicep injury. We don't know the extent of the injury. It could just be nothing, right? A lot of Wednesday practices doesn't really cause for much concern, but keep an eye on that. If he were to miss, you can put Allen inside the top 12 receivers in week 3. Whether Ladd plays or not, I still think Allen is going to have a really big day, as long as he can hide from shutdown corner Pat Surtain, which if he moves into the slot, Surtain likely won't follow him. So if Surtain is lined up on McConkey on the outside or Quentin Johnston, then Allen could eat from the slot. I think he has another strong performance in this one, just because of the matchup, how well he's playing right now, and how often he's being targeted by Herbert. Get him in your lineup. Congrats if you drafted him. Moving on to the solid starts. First guy up is Emeka Egbuka. You could very well put Egbuka in the smash start category. He's playing out of his mind. He's looking like one of the biggest steals in fantasy drafts so far this season, averaging 18.3 fantasy points per game. He has 3 touchdowns in his first 2 games. He hasn't seen a ton of targets, which is mildly concerning, because if the touchdowns go away, what's one of his weeks going to look like? But for now, it's the Ibuka show. It will be interesting also to see what happens once Chris Godwin does return, who was a limited participant in practice on Wednesday. But we don't have to worry about Godwin right now. Emeka is playing out of his mind, and he should continue to do so in week 3 because Mike Evans is probably going to see a ton of Sauce Gardner in this one, which means Emeka is going to be in a lot of one-on-one easier situations. I expect him to be Baker Mayfield's top target out of the slot, where he runs 40% of his routes, and the Jets have allowed the most yards to slot receivers through the first 2 weeks. It's also important to note that the rookie himself is apparently banged up. He missed Wednesday's practice with a hip groin injury. Again, Wednesday practices don't cause a ton of concern, but it's something to monitor going forward. We'll see what he does on Thursday. If he's active, you are starting him. There's no way you can't. He's a strong start. Again, throw him in the smash start category if you want. Another big game is coming for the rookie. All right, next man up is Chris Olave, who hasn't had a huge fantasy day yet, but I promise you they are coming. This man has seen 23 targets through the first 2 weeks. That's insane volume. 31% target share, 28% target per route run rate. He's second in red zone targets behind only Amon-Ra St. Brown. 53.3% of the Saints' air yards in week 2. He's the wide receiver 6 in expected fantasy points. The list could go on and on. The advanced metrics, the utilization is telling us that a huge day is coming, especially with Spencer Rattler performing a lot better than most people were expecting this year. He doesn't look like a terrible quarterback. We said this all offseason. Rattler just needs to be average for Olave to be able to survive, for Olave to be a good fantasy receiver. And the system has also helped out tremendously as the Saints are operating at the league's fastest offensive pace. They're running a ton of plays, and that's all thanks to new head coach Kellen Moore, who I think is one of the brighter play callers in all of football, which has also resulted in Rattler ranking 4th in dropbacks. Chris is being used in creative ways for the first time in his career. They're moving Olave all around the formation, moving him into the slot where he's run about 40% of his routes. Big days are ahead for Olave. Buy low on him while you can if he's not in your roster. And even in a tougher matchup against Seattle, you cannot bench Olave just because of the volume that he's seeing, the amount of offensive plays that this offense is running, the talent that Olave has. I think he needs to be locked into your lineup in week 3, no matter the matchup. And on to our last guy, George Pickens, who had a big week 2, thanks to Dallas and the Giants getting in a shootout. There was a lot of points scored. He had 5 receptions, 68 yards, touchdown on 9 targets, 17.8 fantasy points. This is what we expected to see when Pickens got traded to the Cowboys. Didn't really happen in week 1, but week 2, he came through, and I think this is something that will continue. And in week 3, it should be pretty easy for Pickens because they're going up against the Bears, who just allowed the Lions to score 5 touchdowns last week. And we know how big of a game Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams had. They combined for 11 receptions, 223 yards, 4 touchdowns. This Bears pass defense is an absolute joke. And then on top of that, it's terrible news for Chicago. They just lost arguably their best corner in Jalen Johnson for potentially the year. So he won't be active in this one. Pickens, Lamb, Dak should shred this defense apart. I think Pickens has another big week as the Bears have allowed the most touchdowns to receivers this season. So yeah, if you drafted Pickens, looks like he's going to come through for you this season. And I think he has another strong performance in week 3. That's all I have for you guys today. Check out the running back version of this video if you haven't already. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you in the next one.